It's a lesson I learned from our elderly neighbors, the elderly women of Lakeview. I've known these gals all my life, hundreds of them, and they share a lot of the same qualities. They've never stopped worrying about their children, even now. Maybe a daughter's having a scare with cancer. Maybe a middle-aged son's getting divorced. She's never stopped worrying about it. She may have buried a child. Maybe a daughter or now a granddaughter's lost a baby. How do you help her? More than one baby. They outlived their husbands, and now she's lonely. And she don't feel good today because she doesn't sleep well and her knees hurt. But always a nice smile at the store. And I can tell you exactly how she would respond tonight if I share sad news with her. And tomorrow morning I'll see her at the post office because she's not done yet. And our wise Lakeview grandma will tell us that whatever today was, none of us know about tomorrow. She's correct. None of us know we're here in 24 hours. And wise Lakeview grandma tells us that your life can change when you least expect it. And that's our story tonight. Shari will tell us about her life and how, in an extraordinary situation, her life was changed forever. And I think we're bound to look at our lives back here in Northwest Iowa. Shari's from Denver. Good evening. Thank you for coming, and thank you to the Lakeview Library Board. If I count the members of the Lakeview Library Board, there's probably 20 people that have brought us together tonight and prepared this beautiful new room here at our library. I'm very proud to make this introduction. Pretty good story about this book and tonight's event. I got my pilot's license in high school, and we traveled a lot when I was growing up. And career as an anesthesiologist. And there's a long-held comparison between flying an airplane and administering an anesthetic. It's a good analogy. It's not perfect, but it's good. But beyond that, when there's a problem in the operating room, an accident, there's similarities between flight, aviation, and anesthesia. How do you look at those problems? How do you, to make changes and prevent it from happening in the future, how do you educate people and spread the word about the accident and changes? Well, more than average interest in this kind of thing. And I come in this building about 2 years ago, maybe longer. First shelf out there is new arrivals. And I see this blue book called 13F. It's the blue ocean with the shadow of an airplane. And so I figure 13F's the plane seat. I was correct. So I grabbed this book, and on the back's this blonde gal, her. It says that she grew up on a gravel road in eastern Iowa. And in 1989, she's in Hawaii. It's a red-eye flight across the South Pacific to New Zealand, a routine daily flight for United Airlines. And of all vehicles, it's a Boeing 747, very glamorous aircraft for international flights back then. Shortly after departure, about 24,000 feet, about 100 miles off the island, there's an explosion. Row 13, 13F, is up in the front. And you remember a Boeing 747's got the bump. That's where the stairs goes up to the lounge and the cockpit up there. This explosion causes a hole in the right wall of the fuselage. It's very sad. 9 people are lost immediately. Out. And it's basically the 9 people between Shari and the hole. Since she got on the plane and took a seat, it's the people she's chatting with and observing. The 2 engines, a Boeing 747's got 2 engines on each wing. The 2 on the right side where this blowout occurs, those are out. And with only the 2 engines on the left wing, on a Boeing 747, mind you, pilot turns around 180 degrees, goes back to Honolulu International Airport. Plane stays intact, which is really another miracle of this story. Lands about 20 minutes later. These 20 minutes changed Shari's life. And over the last 30 years, she's spoken to all kinds of audiences, general audiences like us, special audiences, aviation audiences, and that. She's been on about a dozen national TV shows. And now she's an author in 2019. I've gotten to introduce her several times. And my favorite thing is always to say, Shari was on Oprah, Shari was on Oprah. Please welcome to our new Lakeview Library, my friend, Shari Peterson.
Thank you, John. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see everybody and meet a lot of you. So if I haven't met you yet, please come say hi or if you have any questions. But thank you for including me and for everybody who was involved in this. So yes, I do have a bit of a story to tell, and we could spend hours going over it, but I don't think we can do that, right, John? So, yes, anybody familiar with this incident or remember it back in 1989? You remember it? Okay, there's some photos up here I'm happy to share and talk about a little bit. But for years I worked in the travel industry, and one of my jobs was escorting groups. Now, my mother used to tell people I was a paid escort and traveled with executives. The first time I heard her say that, I'm like, whoa! No. So we had a lot of fun with that, but that's what I did. I traveled as a job. So me getting on an airplane is like you going to the grocery store, just a routine day. So this particular trip in February of 1989, I was to be in Australia for a week with about, I don't know, 300 people, 600 is a lot. So routine trip, we get on the flight in Denver, go to LA, not a problem. LA to Honolulu.
We can't hear you back here.
Oh my gosh. Is that gonna be okay? Better? Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start over? No. you can catch it. Anyway, the flight, I got reboarded in Honolulu, and they upgraded me from coach up to business class. And the actual boarding pass is over here. Mary, hold it up if you don't mind. My family, Mary, Sandy. But the actual boarding pass shows me being seated in 9F. And I get on the plane, and I walk in, and here's this gentleman, a doctor probably, sitting there, and he's got his cocktail. Pretty much like this, and he was just sitting there chatting away, and I said, I'm really sorry, but I have 9F. And he says, I'm not moving. Solve that. So the flight attendant's going, we have to push back, just grab a seat. So I plopped down in 13F. Now 13F is at the bulkhead, so there's nobody behind me, right? It's the wall, right? Okay. So I'm on the aisle, a man, his 6-year-old daughter, wife, aisle, two people over here in the aisle. Everything's routine. I sit there, settle in, seatbelt, we roll out. It's 1:52 in the morning in Hawaii. This really gentle rain was going on, and it's very quiet. Routine flight, we take off, and the captain is flying it, and he's told me this too. He was flying it around a thunderstorm, so he was actually flying it. He wasn't letting the other crew do it or anything. And as we're going around this thunderstorm, the seatbelt sign's on, and I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to relax a little bit, and I kind of loosen my belt. I'm thinking I should take a sleepy pill, and I heard a little voice in my head go, don't do that. Okay, whatever. I'm looking around. I thought, I'll read my book. So I pick up my book, and this man goes into my ear, and he goes, tighten your seatbelt. You're in for the ride of your life. And I went, what? And there's nobody standing there. I'm looking all the way down. I can see all the way to the back of the plane. Now, I used to hire flight attendants, and that is not a crew instruction. I don't mean to hear that. You got a problem, right? But in my ear, and it was just so, see, it gives me goosebumps today, because I thought, that is not normal. And I thought, whoa. So I sat there for a minute, and I thought, I'm going to give this seatbelt a tug. So I really anchored it down, and I was kind of unsettled. So I put my thumbs in there, and I had my book laid on my chest, and I went, whew, take a deep breath. And all of a sudden, I hear this grinding noise, and I fly so much, I'm going, oh, that's not good. That is not a noise you should be hearing at this stage of the flight. Grinding noise, and all of a sudden it was like you hit a pothole. It was this jolt. And just like that, you were all dead. Blink. You're gone. Sorry. I just meant you. But it was that sudden. You just blinked. That's how quick it was. From everything normal to complete chaos. There is, the inside of the airplane is sucked out. The wind goes out. Everything that flew past then came in. You know, the walls, the lighting, the oxygen masks, everything that wasn't buckled down went out that hole right there. Now, we are 24,000 feet, do the math, we're almost 3 miles high. Looking down on the water, not knowing what just happened, where did those people go? It's dark because all the lights have been sucked out. As you can see, it's just bare. What do you do? What do you do? You just sit there and go, I'm dead. There is no way this is gonna be a survivable incident. You can see the 2 engines, which are right about where this gentleman's seated, are right there, and they're blazing in flames from all of the debris that was sucked into them. Now, there were 8 people right here in these seats, and the 9th passenger that died was in 9F, my seat. And that was a very bitter pill for me to swallow with survivor's guilt, but that's another thing. So we don't know what's happening. All the flight attendants you can't see, there's all this chaos, they don't know what's going on in the cockpit, and they're trying to turn it around, but in the meantime, the aircraft is going in an angle like this to the water. So I'm just sitting there going, wow, this is how I'm gonna die. I got on this flight to go to work, and now I'm gonna die. It's that matter of fact. And I thought about my family and my friends and how horrible they're going to think this is when they read about it. You know, scared, and I'm going, yeah, it's all that, but I can't do anything about it. It's out of my hands. I'm a troubleshooter, right? There was nothing I could do to correct this or make it better or work with somebody and say, let's fix the hole. You're just helpless. Very, very unsettling. Now, during this period, you're sitting there and I'm trying to pray, not for a pony, which we all did as kids, right? God, dear God, bring me a pony. And I even said, this is not a pony prayer. I'm asking for help. Please, somebody save us. Make this plane, protect the crew. Because I'm watching even our crew, they're racing around trying to clear debris from the aisles, and people were injured. I had a bunch of stuff go past me, so I was bleeding, and this guy next to me, he was holding his little girl. He put a pillow over her face, and I asked him later why, and he said, I didn't want her to see what was coming next. So at one point, I'm holding onto his leg because I didn't know if I was the next one out. So you kind of start getting okay, I can't do anything, but what can I do? And I see the 2 people in that middle photo, in those photos. So it'd be like you 2 ladies, you're sitting here and your feet are hanging out the hole. And your seat's bouncing, and everything in front of you is gone, and you're a bloody mess, right? Because all this stuff had gone by. So I'm looking at the gentleman who's on the aisle, and I'm trying to get him to look at me as I'm holding his arm, saying, don't look, but it's right there. And I'm thinking, at what point do I let go of him? Which was such a, I can't let go of him, but if I hang on, I might go. He's gonna go anyway, and the seat's broken. I mean, trying to fix it again. So they luckily survived, but it was, they had quite a view of the whole thing. So they were okay. There was the flight attendant that told me to take a seat. Also, when I noticed, she had been in the galley right behind me, and when the decompression happened, she was sucked under the seat. Now, you know how big those areas are, right? Yeah, tiny. So she was pretty contorted and messed up, and she couldn't move, and she's trying to claw her way out. So I'm asking her, or motioning, don't look, stay down, and we put a seat over her head to protect her if anything fell. So we had her taken care of. And in the meantime, you just sit there for 17 minutes wondering how this is gonna go. Am I gonna drown? Am I gonna be in pieces? Is that gonna draw sharks? Is it gonna be oily? Will they ever find us? Questions, questions. And I closed my eyes and I felt this peace. Very odd. And I could see these being things going, we got you. We've got you. Don't worry. And I'm thinking, wow, this is dying. It's not scary at all. It's kind of, I could see them. I still see them. See, I got goosebumps, but it was just there they were going, no worries, we got this. We got this. And it was so quiet and calm. And I was still praying, and all of a sudden in my mind's eye, I saw this enormous hand coming under the airplane, like it would be right there, and it was just this guiding hand going like this to set us down. And I opened my eyes and I went, oh my God, we're gonna be okay. And then all the sounds and the noises started coming back. And it was like everything just came to life again. The flight crew was still trying to manage the situation and such. And they did a great job. They had so many issues that, that's another whole story. But anyway, they did a great job doing what they could, and we did get it turned around, like John said, and he brought it in broken, and there's no way we should have made it. They try to recreate this incident on the computers, and we never make it back. We were fully loaded with fuel. That's a problem. You can't land a full airplane anyway, let alone a damaged one. And it was the most damaged aircraft that made it back safely in the history of aviation. So, it was, I know, I gamble now. I'm golden, I got this. But that, you know, the problems we had, and then the engines are on fire, and with all the debris in them, a lot of the leading edge wings and all the mechanics of it were messed up, and they didn't know if they could even turn it around or make it back. Now, if we do get back, how do you stop the airplane? Because they use reverse thrust, right? So these two engines are on fire, he's got these two, we've got way too much fuel, and it's all of a sudden I'm going, you know, I'm thinking all these, I know too much, you know, how bad this is gonna be. Because I'm thinking this is not gonna be a rescue, it's gonna be a retrieval. And I know they're calling the hospitals and the police and everybody's getting lined up to start finding bodies, I just knew it. So we're turning around and you can see all of a sudden in the distance, you see the lights of Honolulu. And I'm thinking, oh my God, is this gonna work? Are we gonna make it? Really? I was like, and you can't talk to anybody because you can't hear. If the wind was 400 miles an hour, it was 20, 30, 40 below. It was so cold, so windy, and so scary. I can't even begin to explain how much of a shock it was to your body and your psyche. Because there's no way we're making it back. So I'm watching all this, and they start lining it up, points it to the runway, and they're trying to give us all these, you know, how you crash position, you lean over, and I said, my own butt is not gonna be the last thing I see. I'm gonna sit up and watch this. Sorry, I was like, I'm not doing that. So I'm sitting there watching all this unfold, and I'm thinking, well, I'm in a convertible 747 going 300 miles an hour. We're gonna try and land on a little rock. I mean, I'm trying to kind of make myself not think about what's really gonna happen. And they did, obviously we brought it back, he landed, everything was very safe. It was an absolute miracle. The people around me were, well, you couldn't communicate, but you could look at them and say, you know, just, I'm with you, don't be scared or whatever. I was just trying very hard to do something so people weren't freaking out like I was, I guess. But anyway, we made it back, and once they landed, everybody broke into applause because we couldn't believe it. They brought it in, it was just a perfect landing, and the fire engines were racing down the side, and I'm thinking, okay, so we did that. Now are we gonna split in half? Because that's a lot of weight all of a sudden on a broken airplane with all the weight. So we finally get stopped. They evacuate that airplane in under a minute. 377 passengers went out. We lost 9. There were 18 crew members. And every crew member was injured. From scratches to a dislocated shoulder, just because it was such chaos and going down the slide and people were running into each other. Has anybody evacuated an airplane ever? I hope not. Well, when you get to the slide, they hit you in the lower back, so your legs kick up, so your heels don't catch on the slide, and they tell you, hit the ground running, and they're just pushing you down the slide on each side. So I had a track scholarship, so I'm like halfway to Kauai when they, it was horrible. And it's raining and dark and windy, or not windy, rainy, and just Hawaiian nighttime rain. So I'm running, and all of a sudden, and I'm just in this fight or flight, and I've got all this noise in my head, and the wind, and shock, and what am I doing here, and what's happening? And I couldn't put anything together. I just kept saying, what's happening, what's happening, what is happening? And all of a sudden, I heard these Hawaiian firefighters. They had this really accent, like pidgin English, and I'm running, and I heard, hey, where are you going? I'm like, what? Do you not see that? So I turned around and I hadn't looked back, and I looked back at the hole in the rain, and I'm just dripping wet, and I'm shaking and scared, and I just collapsed on the runway, and I'm looking at it going, oh my God, it really did happen. I am not making this up. I'm not dreaming. And I closed my eyes for a second just to gather myself, and I felt this, again, this warm hug. It felt like downy, soft feathers just enveloped me. But it came around from the back, and it just encircled me. And I just sat there with my head down and tears running down my face going, what is happening? What is happening here? And I heard again, we got this, we got you, we got this. And then they opened up and all the noises started up again, and then I could hear the firefighters, and they walked over and, may I help, come on, let's get you up. And they walked me back to the medical crews where all the chaos was going on. Do you need help? Do you need glasses? Are you injured? Do you need medications? Is anybody missing in your party? All these questions they were asking. And they started sorting through passengers, because the people that were in the front of the aircraft were wanted by the FBI to be spoken to, because they wanted to know what happened. And surprisingly enough, the people in the back of the aircraft, some of them didn't even know what had happened. They had no idea, because they're back in that corner, 300 people away. They just knew there was some drama, but they had no idea there was a hole, no idea the engines were on fire. And they're going, when did this happen? I can hear the conversations, and really, these people are going, wow, I guess I'm gonna have to catch another flight, and we're going. So there was, again, and there's a point to this, because we had the same experience, but everybody had a different reaction. And how you apply that to your life, that's really important too. So anyway, the whole point there was the exercise of getting certain people to talk to the FBI, and the other folks, they just took them into the airport in Honolulu and sat them down in the aisle, in the tarmacs, and put little yellow police tapes, like an animal. They didn't have very good systems back then. So these people are just sitting there on the floor, and 1 o'clock in the morning going, what happened? And they took us up to the red carpet room to talk to the FBI. So I'm kind of messed up anyway. This is kind of traumatic, and they're sitting there grilling you, going, what did you see? What did you smell? Who do you know? I don't even know what happened. So that group left, another group of FBI came in and said, okay, let's talk about this. What did you see? Oh, can I just get a cup of coffee? Oh my gosh. So there was a lot of interrogation and being led around, and at one point they took us to a phone bank so we could call family, because way before computers and cell phones. So I walk up to the phone bank, and the United rep took me to the front of the queue and handed me a quarter. Remember those days? Now we are dating ourselves. But I walked up to the phone, and I took a deep breath, and I had to do this to put it in the slot because I was shaking so bad. I was still so cold and scared and adrenaline, and I dropped it in there, and then I dialed home. And I said to my husband. I said, hey, and he goes, what do you want? I said, well, and he was a problem anyway, and that's another part of the story, but he's now my ex-husband. Okay, we're done with it. But he goes, what do you want? And I said, well, pardon me for interrupting you. I said, this 747 just blew up around me, and I'm gonna hang up now and let somebody call somebody who gives a And I hung up on him, and I went, "Arr!" And I thought, oh my God, I had never done that in my life. Up to that point, I was so meek, so mild, you would never see me doing this, ever. I was always, I'm sorry. You know, I'm just kind of tiptoeing around. I know, amazing, isn't it? I kind of went the other way a little too much. I was like, I couldn't believe I did that. So, got that phone call out of the way, and then you had an option. Did you want to stay in Honolulu? Did you want to go back to your point of origination, or do you want to continue on? Right? All this is happening at once. It was like, well, can I think about it for a minute? So, I talked to some different people, and they were very helpful. There was a lot of helpful people that didn't know what they were doing, so that's since been corrected in the industry. They were trying, you know. But they took me to a hotel in Waikiki. I said, I need to go on because I'm working. I've got these people I need to meet. My boss said I could send somebody else, and I'm like, why? I'm halfway there. And so I went to the hotel, and I had a friend in Hawaii, and I called him, and I said, hey, what are you doing? And he goes, well, going to breakfast. My wife just went to look. Oh, you were on that flight, weren't you? I said, yes, I was. He said, hold on, I'm gonna call in, I'm gonna come get you, because you can't be by yourself right now. So he took the day off and took me to get my nails done. That's what I wanted. I said, I have to do something to put me back together. I have to do something positive. I have to get back control of what's going on. So I did that, and then we drank gin. I said, I think I want a gin and tonic and sign in. A gin and tonic first. So we had quite a little chat, sitting at the Holly Kalani, if you're familiar with that. You know, that hotel, beautiful pool, oh, it's gorgeous, right on the ocean. And I'm just sitting there going, how did I end up here? How did I end up at the Holly Kalani with my old friend? Oh, I can't even put my, so he said, okay, we gotta get you to the hotel, because I agreed to go on. So the next flight was 8 o'clock that night. So from 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 6 in the morning, and the stress of part of that was in the red carpet room. After they had done all the interrogations, I was given a blanket and a pillow. I want to go back to this. And I was all by myself, and the room was enormous, but I could hear buzzing around, right? People and stuff, and I'm just sitting there, and I had my knees, and I'm holding them, and I'm watching the sun come up, and it shines on that silver fuselage, and it was just like, pow! All of a sudden, the sun hit it, you know, and I watched it, and I looked at it again through that big window, looking at it, going, oh my God, this really did just happen. And I couldn't believe it. It was like, it was an unveiling of sorts. It was such a sign, because the way it was presented was like a Broadway play. It's like, here's what is gonna make you different, help you, heal you, whatever. It was just one of those moments where it's, I don't know how else to describe it, but the sunlight hitting it on that silver, and it just popped. And I actually went, I'm different, I'm not the same. This has changed me forever. And I knew it. So I thought, okay, let's go on the next part of this journey. So they took me to Waikiki. We had options. And I wanted to go to Waikiki because I knew I'd be by the water, and that's healing for me. And I didn't have anything, my purse, my passport, all my cash, jewelry, everything was out the decompression. However, right when it happened, I must have, I put my foot out and stopped my briefcase. So, of course, I had my work, but none of my personal stuff. Thank you. So, I had to, anyway, so I had my briefcase, and I went to the hotel, and I thought, okay, the flight's 8 o'clock, and Scott's gonna come back. I'm gonna lay down for a little bit. I took a shower, and I'm in the shower, and I'm thinking, kind of sore, and I started washing my hair, and I go, what is this? And all these glass and shrapnel and all this stuff is in me, and I'm bleeding, and I'm like, what the heck? And I see this bruise low across my waist, and I'm like, what is that? Oh, the seat belt. The seat belt, that's how strong it was. And I've tried to demonstrate this, and I ripped somebody's clothes, so I'm not gonna do it again. And you can't imagine, it's like, boom, as hard as you can imagine in less than a second. It was a whiplash kind of thing. And that's why the fellow in my seat, 9F, he was pulled out of his seat. The 8 people right here, their seats went, they were in them. That guy was pulled out of the seat, and it was so hard, the arm was like this, it moved. Yeah. So that would have been me. So I learned a lesson, when you get these little hiccups, be very careful, because it's probably gonna save your life or make things better. You might not like it in the moment, but a little misdirection never hurts, right? So we are now at the Waikiki Hilton, I don't remember, some hotel. I've taken my shower, and I don't have anything, I've got the clothes I had on. I go put my towel on and go out on the balcony, 2nd floor, so everybody's walking around. And I'm just sitting there letting the sun hit me, going, again, all I could think of was, what just happened? And my towel falls off. And I thought, I don't care. Now I can hear people talking about it. There's a naked lady on the side. What's wrong? I thought, arrest me. I don't care. And it was so healing to have that control too. I didn't race to, cover myself or whatever. I thought, I am being healed by the sun and the shower and the surf and the gulls and all the Hawaiian sounds, because I'd lived there for 2 years. So I was very familiar with it, and I thought one of the options was to stay in Hawaii, and I wanted to do that. And I thought, if I do that and go back to that lifestyle, I will never leave. And this voice that was becoming stronger and stronger said, you need to leave, because there's other things. You stay, you'll be stuck. You will never grow. So I had to leave. People go, why did you go on? I had to do it. And people ask me, how did you get on that other airplane to go on to the Sydney? And I tell them it's how I was raised. I think that's the answer. And they look at me like, what does that mean? They're not from Iowa. They're not from Iowa. They don't get it, who we are. You fall down, you get up, right? Yeah, see? My dad, he was a World War II combat Marine decorated. And we'd fall down, he never rushed over and go, oh, honey, are you okay? He's like, hey, get me out. You gonna play or you're gonna lay there? And it wasn't mean, it was just a lesson. So there was a lot of reminding me who I really am, much like The Lion King. You've seen that movie, right? It's a classic. Remember who you are. Because I'd gone on a path with a marriage that wasn't working, and I was being pushed into ways and areas that weren't suiting me, but you just go with the flow because you don't want to create a problem, and I don't know what else to do. That's what everybody does. You just make a decision and you go, well, that's the way I'm going. You don't want to change it. So all of a sudden I started going, there's options. You can do this, but do you want to do it, or are you being told to do it? Expected to do it? With a lot of decisions, and that was a big eye-opener for me. So that was the start of the growth of getting my power back, for lack of a better term. Regaining the control over my life was facing that fear and saying, there are other options. I don't have to go that direction just because whatever. I can sit and think about it and go, I'm gonna take a chance, and sometimes that is the best thing to do, because you get all these other opportunities that you didn't consider, because it is a surprise, right? That's happened, you go, I think I'm gonna turn left here. And that came from my dad too. We used to take vacations. And it was so much fun, because they probably were just playing with us, but we get to an intersection and they go left or right. So we don't go left or right. We never had a plan. And I was in Sunday school one day, and we were talking about in Bible school, and this kid goes, well, we're going to the St. Louis Zoo for our vacation. And I remember putting my hands on the desk and turning around, looking at him, and I went, do you know where you're gonna end up? I was like, what kind of trick is that? What? I couldn't, unfathomable. And so, from a very young age, we were shown to roll the dice and see where you land and trust in a guidance. If something tells you, we've all done this, don't go down that road, and you do, and you get a flat tire or something, right? That you hear it, but you don't listen. So I started tuning into that a little bit more, a lot more. And again, I didn't do it perfectly, and I never will, but it sure made other things happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise, because I got off the track. It was like, you know what, I'm gonna go left here. So, let's see, so where were we, John?
Getting on the plane.
I was getting back on the plane, thank you. You read the book. So yes, getting on the plane, I flew on to Sydney, and it was a horrible experience. They tried to put us in the same seats, and mine was 9F. And I went, no, we're not doing that. And that was another thing, I never said no. Again, I was this meek, you know, you're going to 9F, okay. But I said, that was a no. I said, no, I'm not doing that. So there were 5 of us. We had the whole section, only 5 of us chose to go on. So we all sat in a little huddle through the whole flight, because we could see the altimeter, you know, where they show the speed in the air and everything. And when we were talking, and everybody was nervous, and we're watching it, and we get to 20,000 feet, and all of a sudden we all just go quiet. It still makes me. So we're watching it hit 24,000, and we're just waiting for it to happen. I don't know what we were waiting for, but we're watching it, and then it went to 25,000, and we all went, and it just happened, you know? So we were all on edge, but we made it to Auckland, and then a couple hours there, and I went on to Sydney. And when the group came in, checked in, I'm still a zombie. United gave me $200 to buy what I needed, and that was one outfit in Australia, which I wore the whole week. I mean, right? And then there, it's expensive. So I'm trying to figure out, I don't have my luggage. I don't know if it went out. They told us, don't expect to get it back, but if you do, right now it's holding up the floor of the airplane. So we're not removing it until this investigation is complete. So I didn't know where my luggage was, or my money. I don't know how. Of course, it was a different time. I'm traveling internationally with no ID, no passport, no money. Different time. So get to the hotel, and I'm ready to meet the clients. So all these hundreds of people are coming in, and I'm a zombie. They're all excited. What do I hear? Oh my God, I'm so glad I wasn't on that flight yesterday. Can you imagine? Don't know what to say. I just walk off, you know, because I don't want to hear it. But everybody was so, that's the topic, and I didn't know what to do with that, and it would kind of stress me out. So I would step away, I'd go up to my room, and I pulled a chair up to the window looking out on the street, and I would just sit in that chair and look out that window like this, and I'd go, I'll be normal again someday. But right now, help me, you know, help me, because I can't do this, but I gotta do it, I gotta do it. I go back downstairs. Now, I hadn't slept in 66 hours practically. I mean, it's a long time. I couldn't be in the dark. I've never, strange hotel rooms, I love strange hotel rooms, because there's always some fun thing in there. I couldn't do it. I'd lay down, close my eyes, they would just pop open. Could not get to sleep. Nothing could get me to sleep. So I was just running on adrenaline, and then hearing all this, and that was what saved my bacon, was to go to my room, be in the quiet, and look outside at normal people and go, someday I could be back like that. But right now, I am a mess. But nobody knew it. Stuff it, get back to work. So that was a very rough week. About 3 or 4 days into the event, I had my hotel rooms figured out. You know, we moved around a little bit, but I had the light over here, so I wasn't in the dark. I could not be in the dark. You know, I had little things that made me feel safe. So here I am. I'm in an accident that I can't describe. I have nothing personal on me except the clothes I wore. I have no money, no ID. I'm in a strange country, strange time zone. I'm losing a day, and I was supposed to act normal. I had nothing to anchor myself to, right? It was cruel. I mean, so I kept looking for ways to be normal. And I walk in one night, and I'm so tired, and hit the key and I put my shoulder into the door and I walked in and went, there's my luggage. I freaked. I was like an animal. I just froze because it was so creepy to me. Creepy. There it sat. And I backed up and I'm like, holy, I can't. So I didn't touch it. I would walk around it. I couldn't do it. I had the bell guys come up and handle it. I didn't open it till the end of the trip. I couldn't touch it. It was something that I can't even, I thought about it. Why did I not just open it and go have clothes? Couldn't do it. So that was a very interesting thing too. I had to sit and think about that, like, okay, are you that, what is it, right? What is it? Scared? I mean, it's probably saved my life. My luggage probably kept the floor up. But so the rest of the trip, now we are done. Come back, get on a flight, they go, well, you got the 15-hour nonstop, Sydney, LA. 15 hours on a plane. Again, why me? Why me? So I get on and I sit down and this gentleman next to me, and kind of fidgety, he goes, you okay? I said, no, I'm a little nervous. And he goes, well, you don't like to fly? And I said, no, it's not that. I didn't want to say anything because, I was in a plane that crashed and here we are taking off, That's rude. But he kind of figured it out. And so he goes, I'm right here if you need anything. Wake me if you need to. Have a nice flight. And he goes to sleep. Thank you. So we're flying about 45 minutes, and all of a sudden it does this little mush back, and then they set the speed and everything, and this flight attendant, so I'm right at the galley again. This flight attendant walks by, and when she did, I played third base. So I went, whap, grabbed her arm. And I said, what's happening? What's happening? And she goes, are you okay? And I said, no, what's happening? That didn't sound right. And she's looking at me and she goes, why didn't you come with me into the galley? Very professional. Get me away. And I thought, I don't think I could take my seatbelt off. And I thought, well, I did. And we stood in the galley, and this woman probably saved my bacon. She talked, showed me how they made coffee, where their beds were, how much garbage they have. Here's the kitchen, here's the dumbwaiter, here's how many meals we're gonna have. And she's just, and every time another crew member would come in, she had some signal or something, or my face, but they wouldn't interrupt us. They let her talk me off the ledge. So she was amazing. So I get back to Denver. So in the middle of the flight, 7 hours, I'm looking at my watch going, 7 hours, I have 8 more to go, and I can't get out of my seat. So we had 4 meals and 3 movies. So we land. So excited to get off the water in LA. I used to have to go to LA at least once a month, so that was a very familiar airport to me. So I go over and I stand against the wall and I'm kind of leaning with my foot up with a water or something, and I'm watching people and they're speaking American English. I could recognize the names of the towns, and I'm just trying to dip my toe back into, okay, I got this. So I'm watching all this for about 2 hours. Then I get on the flight. I'm so excited. I don't do windows anymore. I sit on the aisle. And I was looking out, watching all the Rocky Mountains and all the familiar terrain from the deserts, from the deserts to the Rockies and into Denver. And we land, and going, excuse me. I'm crying. I'm sorry. But we land, and the jetway, remember when we had jetways and you could walk, you didn't have to go through security and everything. So I'm walking up the jetway, and I see all this commotion going on at the end, and I'm looking around going, oh, it's a flight flight. We must have a sports person or a celebrity or something on board. And I am so tired, and I'm just so glad to be home. And I walk through the doorway, and all of a sudden, all the lights come on, and they're sticking microphones in my face, and I'm going, me? You're here for me? And it was this huge welcome, and I was so not ready for it. And they did it with a good heart, but again, it was another in-your-face thing, and I'm like, I'm not ready for this. So that was a little eye-opening as well, but when I got off that plane, I was a different person. I knew I was not ever gonna be that person again. I couldn't, that person was gone. So, any questions on that part, and then we'll come back to some other questions, but I didn't miss anything, everybody good?
When did your parents ever find out?
Oh, they were traveling around and they didn't know this had happened. You know, my family all knew about it, but they were somewhere in the Rockies, you know, goofing off. They're Iowa people in the Rockies. You know, they're wandering around, idiots out wandering around, right? So there's no cell phone, so they were listening, you know, this flight from, you know, blah, blah, and they went, oh, well, Sherry's going to Sydney, but she couldn't have been on that one. So they called home and found out, so they came back. Yes.
Sherry? They began to process you for your passport and so forth as they interrogated you after the flight landed.
No, there was no passport. I flew with nothing, no credentials. Anyway, let me tell you what happened next, then we can come back to that. So I get home. Now, I'm married to a very, anybody know submarine sailors at all? Are you one?
He's a sailor, but not
Oh,
submarine.
well, you know submarine sailors? Who's a submarine sailor? Anybody? I mean, you meet military people all the time, right? How often do you meet a submarine sailor? They're a very, how can I say this politely? Unique group. But, so I was married to this man that was really bright. Yeah, you don't. They're crazy people too, but anyway, I mean, you love yourself in a tube, you know? But he had set up a bunch of things to, you know, welcome me back and all this. But in the meantime, he also was because he was so smart and so successful, he was a bully. When he was on and nice, he was fun, he was generous, but when he was not in a mood, he was a bully and verbally abusive, okay? Because he could, I used to laugh, he was like the Zorro of insults. He was the master. People would insult me and I go, I live with the master. That's nothing. You know. So this guy was a handful, right? And we had some incidents where I'm trying to figure out what to do with this relationship because I was going a different direction, he was not. So I was at the sink one day and I was standing there doing dishes and all of a sudden I had to grab the counter because my knees were buckling, I was falling down. And he walked through and he goes, get over it. Oh, I am so over it. Yeah, that's the X. So it was that thing. And the fact that I stood up to him and said, we're done here. You cannot treat me like that anymore. He would always tell me to keep my mouth shut. We would go to meetings and he'd say, nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Do not talk. I want you to just stay out of my way because I'm the big shot here. So I'd grab a cocktail. How are you? How are you? How are you? How do you feel? It became a problem. It was my coping mechanism because I couldn't talk to anybody, so that was part of the problem. And I thought, I do not want to go down that path. That's going to kill me. And I just knew if I stayed with him, I would die. I would drive drunk. I would overdose. I just knew it because I was becoming so depressed and it just was unhealthy. So that was a big part of the change that happened as well. Let's see. Where do you want me to go, John? This story could go so many different directions here now.
You have a question over there.
Yes.
I mean, you're a survivor from Iowa, hard worker, great parents, and you have your freedom. How did you have the faculties of mind to get the oxygen and not freeze to death? It had to have been just, like you said, below zero.
Well, first of all, there was nothing you could do. You had to stay in your seat. So there was nothing, the faculty was, I just gotta keep, it felt like somebody was standing on your chest when it first happened because the oxygen was so, there was none at that altitude. So we lowered, he came down from 24,000 to around 15, I think, right? 15,000 so we could breathe because all the oxygen mass had been ripped out. Yeah, it was just stripped. So the faculties were mainly just to try and keep yourself okay. You know, you're checking around, you're watching the flight attendants, and they're badly injured. There's some really badly injured people, and they were trying to do their jobs, so it was kind of everybody pitch in. I mean, this is another thing to think about it. You can think how you're going to act with something, but you don't know until it happens, right? You don't know. How am I gonna behave? If all of a sudden a plane crashed into here, you know, are you gonna run away, or are you gonna run to the fire and say, you don't know. You think, oh, I'd be a hero. No. You know, so you don't know, and that is something that was such a huge lesson for me, because the programming that I received, I suddenly realized not only did it not work because it wasn't me, but you cannot pick situations. You have to discover who you really are, because if I'm trained to be a firefighter and I'm supposed to run into a building, but I can't, if I really have to, where's the truth in that? So that's part of what my journey was, is who am I really? How do I react? How do I think? How do I do that? So that's part of what I do in my workshops and stuff, is let's figure out, let's let you reclaim who you are versus who you're told to be. Because again, if you take our situation, like John and I were in the same flight, for example, I come out of it this way, John's sitting there, he'll never get on an airplane again. We had the exact same circumstances, but what do you do with them? Now, are you doing it because it's who you are, or are you doing it for another reason? And so once you go, no, I got this, or I don't, but this is who I really am, it is life-changing. You lose fear. Your fear, because John and I talked about this. When you make a decision to do something, you do it because you want to, or you don't do it for what reason, usually? Anybody? You're afraid. Yeah, you're scared. Yeah, you're afraid. And so I started telling people, teaching people, okay, what are you afraid of? If you do that, what's the worst that could happen? Think of something. Think of something you are not doing because you're afraid you'll look stupid. Oh, like this. Who wants to get up here with me? You know what I mean? I don't like to be in front of people. I'll look stupid. And I go, so that's who I am. You know, it's that kind of thought process. I be careful. But those kind of things, you know, who are you really? And that's one of the things that was so important to me to say, changed my life. And I've had a lot of people say the same thing. They hadn't thought about that.
Did you stay in the travel industry
Yes, I did.
with
I
the
did.
same company?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yep. And they were very, very helpful. There was a lot of stress involved, and in Denver, walking around, and people would go, "That's her. She was in the paper." And I'm thinking, I can hear you. I go, wow, that's rude. So, and there were things in elevators. People would be talking about it. I went to St. Thomas. I think you saw that. You read about that. But I'm sitting in the airplane, and this couple, they were obviously newlyweds. The gear drops as we're going into St. Thomas. She's, he's holding her, going, "Oh, honey, it's okay. What if you'd have been on that plane that blew up over Hawaii?" And I went, it was everywhere. So I had to find a place for that kind of stuff too. Stress. I went to a stress seminar. There were about 100 people in there, and I snuck in the back. And he goes, "Okay, we're going to talk about stress. But if you'd have been on that flight last week in Hawaii, that's real stress." And here I'm sitting in the back going, seriously? Another one. So,
A few things, I see our hours kind of coming to a close.
okay.
I've got a few gifts for her.
Yay!
Don't you want your free presents?
That's right. Now, polite, you got it for everybody.
Well, that's part of the next announcement.
Oh,
Shari is gonna be signing books in a few minutes, and there's treats outside the library, people provided. She'll sign and date a book for you, and that'd be fun to have in a few years. They're $20, I believe.
That's correct.
Let's help this author sell all his books. They came in cars in a couple trips from Colorado. I think there's about 100 of them. And I got the best thing you can do for an author is to read her book and purchase her book. And I've got a proposal for you. If you don't have the funds tonight, Mary, tell them you're my friend, because you are my friend. If you wanna pay me back someday, come down for a cup of coffee. So let's help her sell all these books, buy some of the people away. There's so much more to her story. There's her upbringing, her parents and her uncle over by Cedar Rapids, growing up in the 50s and 60s. The 60s. And the workshop on Saturday morning, Shari's a lot of fun. You're sure getting a good flavor over here.
Thank you.
If you want to spend more time with her, that's 2 hours in this room, I believe, on Saturday morning. Ask Shari about it, or any of the library personnel too. And don't you want your free presents?
Well, may I make?
Yes, and then why don't we take a couple
Well,
questions?
I have a treat for everybody too. You know, after I graduated high school, and you'll read about it.
Well, yeah.
You'll all read about it. I moved to Hawaii. I mentioned that I'd lived there earlier, and I'd lived there for 2 years. I'm looking at Joni, because you said you read the book. I would like to introduce my Hawaii roommate. Oh, Patricia, come here. Oh, yes. Pat and their sister Karen and her husband Jim, but this is the lady that got me to Hawaii, and that's all I'm gonna say. But she's so much fun, and it changed my life, Pat.
We had so much
We
fun.
did, and you'll see
still
pictures, you'll see pictures of us, and you won't recognize us because
Yeah.
we didn't look like this in the 60s.
It was a few years ago.
Yeah, it was, but I wanted to introduce her because she's just so special, my family, and I've got other family and extended family in these 2 rows too, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mahalo. Thanks, Pat.
I've got true friends here from Des Moines, the Whitmacks, and Art, do you have a question for Shari?
I did.
Oh, hi, Art.
Phenomenal book.
Yes.
And Dr. John's just getting into what happened in your life prior. And you met your father, a Marine. I love the quote. Let me find it real quick. He said, improvise, adapt, overcome.
Yes.
So we got to know your father a little, not much about Mother Vic. Tell us about your mother.
Oh, thank you. That, she and Karen and Pat were sisters, our mothers. Mother Vic was extraordinary. They were so ahead of their time. She was a tiny, very cute, feisty, independent. She was not a homemaker. She loved to have fun. They were extraordinary parents. Their philosophy for raising kids was, from the very beginning, we never got yelled at. It was, if you broke something or spilled it, I'm gonna teach you how to clean it up and not do it again. So we never were smacked because you spilled the milk. It was, well, how are you gonna clean it up? Oh. So that kind of upbringing. And she was very protective, but my favorite story, this is who she was. Even into adulthood, she was not my mother, she became my really good friend. But I came into the kitchen one day as a little kid, you know, and I got my pony, and I walk in and she's getting stuff down to cook, flour, you know, make cookies or something, and she does this, kind of like, huh. And she reaches over and just knocks the flour on the floor, and she starts dancing in it. So we're running around in the flour, and it's just, that's Mother Vic, right? She loved to laugh, she loved my dad. They were such a cute couple. They met and they were married 4 months later. She loved a cocktail. She wasn't a goofy one, but she'd have a nip, and then we'd start laughing and talking about things. She loved to travel. She loved her kids, and we just couldn't get enough. We didn't have a lot of stuff, but what we had was enough, and that's a huge lesson. So, thank you for asking. I miss her so much. She died shortly after her 80th birthday, and she was very, very ill. But at her birthday, we had live music, and she got out of her wheelchair and danced. Right? And she died 3 weeks later. So, yeah, she was something else. There's a picture of her. You'll see. Very smiley, right?
Yeah.
She was great. Is great. Thank you for asking.
Is there another question or two, or don't you want your free presents?
Yes,
One of the fire questions to, my first cousin Marty has some Claudette, or here from Decorah.
Yeah.
Overwhelming sometimes. We met last summer, and the first time I said, well, I enjoyed the book. The first 80 or 90 pages are on her upbringing in Iowa farm. And I said, I understand why that's part of the story and it's in the book. But I said, I grew up on an Iowa farm. I said, what I sat up and paid attention is 18 years old, goes to Hawaii, and it's fun on the beach and seeing Led Zeppelin. And more, she wrote it. You're too polite for me to say it. So I found, this I saw in the catalog just a month ago. You want to tell them the Janis Joplin story?
You do.
Well, she had so many encounters those first 2 years after high school. The Apollo 11 crew, for example, landed on Thursday the 24th. And it sounded to me like she saw them that Sunday. You know, they landed about 800 miles off of Hawaii, and Nixon was there on the USS Hornet. And then they were in isolation, but she saw them in the silver isolation tank on the following Sunday, the 27th. Aldrin and Collins, Armstrong.
By fluke, again, it was just a fluke.
She saw Janis Joplin. She only saw the last half of the concert, and she said, oh, that's okay, I'll see her the next time she comes through. Well, sad, but Janis, her life came to an end the following month. And so anyway, you got a Janis Joplin, 19...
Oh my God! What's
It says 1969, and
Well, that's
actually...
the year.
Another of the bands she saw was Sergio Mendes, and nobody ever talks about Sergio Mendes. There were a couple old tunes and a neat crap we had in 1977. He's still going, he's 80 years old. This is a documentary just made on him recently.
Oh, wow.
And so it's out of the wrapper because I saw it.
Well, the story is my very first concert ever was Sergio Mendes. And I couldn't believe I was in the same room with somebody my town had 300 people. So I'm like, oh my God, he's clear down there, but it's the same room. So that was my first ever concert. So from Sergio to Janis. We'll just leave it at that. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
You listen to me. You listen to my story.
Well, that's the next gift. On a personal note, we met last summer, and I've really enjoyed planning this with her and getting to know Shari more. There's been a lot of phone calls and letters and notes and serious conversations and fun conversations. There's been 2 or 3 meals and a couple bottles. Do you want to tell them the tequila story?
No.
Ask me the tequila story.
Well, I'm from the mountains, so coming down here, I was golden.
The Phillips have a local winery from Lakeview, Rustic River. So take this back, and next Christmas Eve you can have it out in the Rockies, and then you can turn it into a souvenir.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, book signing, there's treats, punch.
Well, can I say one thing too?
Yeah,
please?
yeah.
Two Geminis trying, we're both high verbal, so.
I'm not high verbal.
Okay. I really want to thank you guys. I'm so humbled because I was told for so long I keep my mouth shut that you wanted to hear this or read it. I can't tell you, I just really appreciate it. And I can't thank you enough, and the library people, and hopefully you, Ernest, down the road, and Dee and other people. If I could share a story and maybe make a change in somebody's life or give them something else to think about, I would love to do it. So thank you all. I appreciate it.